Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharane. Today we're reading from the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, chapter 3, Karma Yoga. This is the last verse in the chapter, text number 43. Evam Bude Param Budva Samstavyatmana Atmana Vihi Shatru Mahavaho Amrupam Darasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, Almighty Armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Purport. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end. The material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities, lust, and desire, predominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One may give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed towards one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. The verse again. Evam Bude Puram Budva Samstavyatmana Atmana Tehi Shatru Mahavaho Amarupam Darasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, Almighty Armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. In this chapter, Arjuna had asked a question to Krishna. Well, actually, Krishna had made a statement to Arjuna. Shreyan Swadamo Viguna Paradharmat Swanustitat Shredarame Nidanam Shreya Paradharmo Bhayavaha. So this is in the same chapter. It is text number 35. Very significant verse is 35 because out of the billion or 2 billion, how many billions of verses there are in the Vedic literature, Krishna only repeats a couple or a few verses twice. Completely, he cites in the Bhagavad Gita twice 2 verses, and this is one of them. Bhagavad Gita is a summary of all the Vedic literature. If you're going to summarize a billion or 2 verses, the ones that you utilize must be very important. And if you cite something twice in 700 verses, summarizing some billions of verses, they must be very significant. So this verse, starting with text number 35 must be quite significant. And indeed, it is the basis of the rest of this particular chapter. And the translation is, it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faulty, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction, the cost of performing one's own duty, is better than engaging in others' duty. To follow another's path is dangerous. So basically, karma yoga, which is what this chapter deals with, is a recognition that everything here belongs to Krishna. Not only everything belongs to Krishna, but he's controlling everything. And not only he's controlling everything, but he's giving us an opportunity to become more and more conscious, or an opportunity to become less conscious. That's our choice. That's what we call free will. Either we can orientate our mind towards Krishna, or we can orientate our mind towards sense gratification. That will depend upon our knowledge and our experience. Now, all of us have already had experience since time immemorial of sense gratification, and there is a kind of happiness in sense gratification. So naturally, we've grown accustomed and attached to it. There's another happiness that we're promised in Krishna consciousness. And we may have experienced that to one degree or another. But the living entity liking variety sometimes has the idea a little sense gratification and a little Krishna consciousness. And sometimes the happiness and sense gratification of its many varieties. And basically speaking, the varieties, as explained in the verse I read, comes down to two things. Feeling oneself to be superior to others in some way, whether by having more money than someone, being more beautiful than someone, being more powerful than someone. And of course, nowadays, power is not always exhibited by strength, sometimes intellectual ability, champion chess player or sportsman, somehow or another becoming distinct from others by becoming better in some field. Even if I have a better collection of butterflies than my fellow competitors who are also collecting butterflies, I have a sense of superiority that makes me feel better than others. And that feeling better than others is what inspires us in the material world. Indeed, even our sense gratification is a means of showing how we're superior to others. We can eat more, we're better than others. We can sleep more or more comfortably than others. We can have more sex than others, or we enjoy more beautiful people than others. And we know all the martial arts, or we know how to win friends and influence people. Somehow or another, we know how to defend ourselves in this world. And not only that, but we look both ways before we cross the street, and therefore we're sure that no car will hit us. So these are the general experiences, namely trying to get the resources for our sense gratification and then enjoying the resources in some way or another. Even we give away the resources in charity, sometimes is that feeling that I'm more charitable than everyone. For instance, Jarasandha was a demon. His mother was a demon. She was a witch named Jara. And actually, his mothers gave birth to two halves. Two different ladies gave birth to two halves. King thought this was pretty useless. He threw the two halves into the forest, and a witch named Jara came and put the two halves together, and he became Jarasandha. Jara put him together, two halves. In any case, he was quite generous. When he had heard from Krishna, when Krishna, Bhima, and Arjuna went to challenge him to a fight, and the guys disguised as brahmanas, and Krishna told him about the glories of giving in charity. How there was a king named Shibi, gave in charity, how Ranti Dev gave in charity, Magadha gave in charity, Bali Maharaj gave in charity, so many great souls gave in charity. So Jarasandha took up the competition. You glorify someone, how great they are, and the conditioned soul immediately accepts that as a challenge. If they're great, I'm going to be greater. So if they gave so much charity, I'm going to give more charity than they did. So Jarasandha promised, he said, yes, I'll give my own head in charity if I can get immortal fame like they did. So this is the gross and subtle way the soul becomes conditioned by material nature, trying to be better than others. Now, karma yoga has as the premise that it's not really possible to become, in one sense, better than anyone else, because everything eternally belongs to Krishna. Whatever we're imagining belongs to us. It's only imagination, because we ourselves, as Krishna has explained in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, we're eternal, and we're actually outside the material nature. Therefore, we have no direct control over anything in the material nature. We do have control. We do have a capacity to desire, and we can elect to surrender to Krishna, the controller of the material nature, who's known as Rishikesh. And when we surrender to Krishna, then Krishna takes charge. And when Krishna takes charge, then this body is utilized as Krishna's instrument in his service. Therefore, if we know what Krishna wants, by hearing from Krishna and his representatives, Guru, Sadhana, and Shastra, and confirmed by the super soul within the heart, and desire that, then Krishna fulfills that desire. And we become, our body, mind, and words become part of an instrument for Krishna. And if we don't do that, if we're not conscious of what Krishna wants, or we're not doing what Krishna wants, then our senses and mind will tell us what they want. And naturally, the conditioned soul is used to what the senses want. They want to eat, they want to sleep, they want to mate, they want to defend in the different varieties. That may be why eating is such a challenge. It's not a challenge to eat. Everyone likes to eat. To remember Krishna while we're eating, that's a challenge. And if we can do that, then there's even a bigger challenge to remember Krishna while we're sleeping. How many of us, every night we go to sleep, the first thing we do is enter into Krishna's pastimes. And throughout the whole night, we're engaged in Krishna's pastimes, and we wake up to engage in more pastimes with Krishna. Or as Prabhupada said in one lecture, we're looking forward to the happiness of sleep. And the happiness of sleep is there is no happiness. We're unconscious. Someone wakes up and said, "How was your sleep?" "Oh, it was very nice. I didn't remember anything." What kind of happiness is it when you're unconscious? That means I can take a hammer and hit you on the head and you become unconscious. They say, "Why did you do that?" "Oh, just for your happiness, Prabhu. Just so you become unconscious and become happy again." Therefore, we have a choice. Either we could try to uncover or discover what Krishna wants, or we can go along with our senses, which is sometimes apparently much easier, but the result is not so pleasant, the final result. Therefore, Arjuna is asking, now Arjuna was brought up in a culture where he was a Kshatriya, but we don't have that. Sometimes devotees identify themselves as Kshatriyas because they like to fight. That's not Kshatriya, that's less than Shudra. Kshatriyas, they don't go around just fighting because they want to show their skill. They fight on religious principles. Otherwise, it's simply animal. The animals also fight. But that doesn't mean that the animals in the forest are Kshatriyas. But Arjuna was a real Kshatriya, trained in religious principles. And he was wondering, actually, it seems that Krishna, even by the third chapter, seems to be making some sense of what he's saying. But still, I'm not going to do it, whatever he's saying. For instance, at the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says to Arjuna, Karpanya dosha swabhava. Karpanya dosha swahata swabhava. Now, I'm a soul surrendered to you, basically, he says. Now I'm confused about my duty. I have lost all my composure due to weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I'm a disciple and a soul surrendered into you. Kindly instruct me. And then the next verse, Arjuna says to Krishna, I shall not fight. It fell silent. Typical disciple. Guru Maharaj, I'm surrendered to you. Guru Maharaj gives an instruction. Sorry, Guru Maharaj, I can't do that one. You don't understand me. Can you give me another instruction? Well, that's a little bit better. You're getting close. Oh, you got it, Guru Maharaj. Now you've understood me. So Krishna had that same problem with Arjuna. Arjuna says to Krishna, I'm surrendered, and then says, sorry, Krishna, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to do what you tell me. It took Krishna another 600 verses or so to convince Arjuna to do what he asked him to do at the beginning. So Arjuna understands that. He says, actually, even by the third chapter, Arjuna is starting to think that Krishna may have said something intelligent. It all seems to kind of fit together, but still, I'm not going to do what he told me. So he's asking Krishna, why, with my little tiny brain, and I've understood what you said, and I do have some desire to do it, but I don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to do it. What's the problem? So Krishna was telling Arjuna that right now, you don't like your prescribed duty, what you're supposed to do. Now, there are two types of prescribed duties. One of them is according to Varna, and the other is according to an ashram. The other is according to one's spiritual identity. I think most of us will agree that in this age, there's no question of performing our prescribed duty according to Varna and ashram. Because there is hardly any Varna and ashram. If it's at all manifested, it's manifested a little tiny bit within the Hare Krishna movement. At least in the Hare Krishna movement, we still agree that there are men and that there are women in general. So that much we've understood, we're accepted. And therefore we have household, brahmachari life or brahmacharini life, household life, vanaprastha. And the ladies, they accept that they're not going to take sannyas, at least not within our movement. So there is some kind of varna and ashram, some rules and regulation, but it's not very strictly followed. Our main purpose is that it would be impossible to follow our spiritual sadharma if we didn't have some idea at least what our material dharma should be. If we can't even figure out what's a man and what's a woman, it's going to be very hard to figure out what's a spiritual soul and what's a body. So that much discrimination has to be there, or else we're completely lost. So some arrangement is made, not very strictly, in the terms of ashram especially, and something about varna. I mean, we're not encouraged to open a slaughterhouse, or we're encouraged to protect cows. We're encouraged to try to preach, especially. Act as a Brahmin. Be clean, be truthful, have sense and mind control. So there is some elements of varna and ashram in our society. But our real strength, or our real dharma, I should say, is the spiritual dharma, the orders coming down in disciple succession from our acharyas to our present day authorities. In other words, all of us are supposed to become transparent medias to the acharyas. Or Srila Prabhupada once wrote to me, he said that we're all servants of Krishna working in disciple succession. And at the end of the letter he wrote, he said, please study all the books I've written, and that sometimes afterwards you'll have to help carry on the disciple succession. So that's Krishna's instructions to all of us, to become a transparent media to the previous acharyas, which means, basically speaking, follow the process of pure devotional service, gradually getting the intelligence coming from Krishna, from our acharyas, and therefore allowing Krishna to enter into our heart and manifest his pastimes without any disturbance or an impediment coming from our own material desires. In other words, just become an instrument for Krishna. That's all Krishna is asking. Accept that this body belongs to him, our material possessions belong to him, everything belongs to him, including we belong to him. And when we understand that Krishna perfectly belongs to us, then Krishna will also accept that he belongs to us. Krishna reciprocates. In any case, Krishna has a desire. Now that desire may not be completely clear to us. He has desires, and we may not be completely in agreement with those desires. Krishna desires that everyone goes back to him and revive their eternal loving relationship with him. And we may have a desire that people surrender to us and engage in a loving relationship with us, and let Krishna go somewhere else, find someone else to have a loving relationship with. So that's a problem, especially since Krishna is the source of everything, including source of all sweetness, all love, everything that's glorious, everything that's worshipable, everything that's attractive. And to compete with Krishna is generally not a very good idea for the conditioned soul. The only thing we get is a little bit of false ego, a little bit of satisfaction from the gratification of our desires and the expansion of our false ego. Therefore, even when we come to devotional service, which is very fortunate in this age, because at the present moment, no one is making progress through Varna and ashram towards realizing Krishna nor our spiritual identity. Not even karma yoga, which is mentioned in this chapter. No one knows what their duty is in Varna and ashram. And even if they knew, what are they going to do with it? You think if one thought one was a Kshatriya, what are they going to protect? What religious principles will they protect? Go around the world and close up all the slaughterhouses? How far will you get? Or if you thought you were a Brahmin, and as it says in Nectar of Devotion, every time you hear someone blaspheme Krishna or his devotees, you try to defeat them. And if you can't defeat them, then you cut out their tongue and then take your own life. So how long would we last? We'd have a lot of tongues on the ground and a lot of dead devotees. So it's impractical. Or the alternative is just go away, which is usually, if we can't defeat people when they're blaspheming Krishna, then we should just go away. The alternative, cutting people's tongues out and take one's own life, is not very, it's not a good alternative. It's not very productive in this age. Therefore, performing one's own duty in Varna and ashram, or accepting a spiritual master through the process of sadhana bhakti, and then doing our duties, chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping the deities, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, serving the devotees, and making the atmosphere spiritual, especially what Sri Rupa Goswami recommends. But why don't we do that 24 hours a day, or at least if we're awake 6 hours? Why don't we do that consistently for 18 hours a day? All of us, after being in the Hare Krishna movement for 2 weeks, we know that's what we're supposed to be doing. But why can't we do it? So Arjun's asking the same question. And we should wonder also. Now, due to our false ego, whatever we do, we think is nice. We like everything about ourselves, including our false ego, what we think is ourselves. But we have to become a little introspective and ask, why am I not Krishna conscious? One time Prabhupada was talking to, well, he was in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada used to stay, he only used to sleep 2 or 3 hours a night. And he was translating 12 o'clock at night. And he rang the bell, and his servant at that time was Guru Kripa Prabhu, came. And Prabhupada said, what were you doing? The Guru Kripa Prabhu said, I was sleeping, Prabhupada. I said, why are you sleeping? He said, because I'm tired. So Prabhupada said, I only sleep 2 hours a night. Why don't you sleep 2 hours a night? So Guru Kripa said, because I'm not a pure devotee, Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, why aren't you a pure devotee? So if we think devotional service and pure devotional service and meeting Krishna is for just a few people, maybe a lot more in the spiritual world, but around here, my constitutional position is a conditioned soul. And therefore, I have a perfect excuse why I'm not a pure devotee, because I'm a conditioned soul. At least in that incident, Prabhupada didn't accept that as an excuse. In any case, we're supposed to try to become a pure devotee. And of course, as we know, it's a gradual process, but it shouldn't be so gradual that at the end of Kali Yuga, we suddenly wake up and we realize, well, I don't have too much time left because there's a lot of people chasing me, trying to eat me. So maybe I should get a little bit more sincere about chanting my rounds. Oh, we have to avoid that. So Arjuna asked a question after hearing Krishna that he should fight even if he doesn't want to. He should perform his duty even if it's unpleasant. So Arjuna asked, why? I agree with you, but why is it that my mind is so flickering that I don't want to follow what you told me, although I know it's right? So then Krishna says it's because of lust. It's lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of the world. In other words, we have to have some respect for Maya. She's not just, one of the little energies of Krishna, and, so what for Maya? I'm a great devotee. What do I care about Maya? Whereas Giriraj Maharaj was walking one time with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada made a philosophical statement, and Giriraj Maharaj said, "Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada." He said, "I didn't understand that before because I was in Maya." And Prabhupada said, "You were in Maya?" He said, "You're always in Maya." He said, "Sometimes you get a little realization, but that doesn't mean you're not still in Maya." Now, we shouldn't glorify Maya so much. It's not our business to go around saying Jai Maya. But we should have some respect. Or as Srila Prabhupada said, one of the problems with my disciples is that they're not sufficiently afraid of Maya. Yoga chalati manasa. That as soon as we make advancement in devotional service, then at once Maya tries to trick us by different allurements. As soon as we make an advancement, sometimes we become slack and thinking, oh, let's see, I become such an advanced devotee. And as soon as we think like that, we become a little proud, thinking that we know something. And then Maya immediately attacks us. Oh yeah, really? Well, what about this? Wouldn't you like a little, prestige? What about a little sense gratification? What about a little adoration? Wouldn't you like that? Let me show you what it would be like. And then we drift into our material consciousness, and we're watching our mind go in a completely opposite direction from devotional service. And we think, well, this is rather nice. This is really, another pleasant pastime in the illusory energy. Until we snap back and we think, wait a second, I think I've been through this before. Maybe it's not going to take me to a very happy place. And then we realize that actually I'm not as great as I thought I was. I'm still a very small little soul, completely dependent upon Krishna. And that as soon as I forget that I'm immediately in difficulty. Therefore, lust, anger, and then anger turns into delusion, and we're living in an atmosphere. The conditioned soul lives in an atmosphere of delusion, material identification, material affection, and we haven't remembered our relation with Krishna yet, or even who we are, or what to speak of the transcendental intelligence and expertise to serve him. Therefore, we have to maintain our humility by proper understanding. And if we make a mistake, or we should say, after we make mistakes, then we should realize that I've been tricked again by Maya. We shouldn't lament too much. because that's another trick of Maya. Instead, we should go back. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And pray like Pariksha Maharaj, who garlanded a snake around the head of Somika Rishi and felt bad about it. But then he was determined that Krishna should help him, even give him some reaction, so that he didn't commit the same mistake again. And indeed, Krishna did help him. He sat him down on the bank of the Ganges, and he heard from such an exalted soul as Shukadeva Goswami about Krishna. So that's how Krishna helped him rectify the mistake, just by hearing about him, by hearing about Krishna. Now, Krishna explains to Arjuna in the next verses that we're in Maya, but luckily we're in a kind of Mayic state, which is very fortunate. In other words, we're covered by illusion, but not so much that we can't understand reality to one degree or another. In the human form of life, one has enough intelligence to begin to understand that we're not this body, and that Paramatma, the super soul, is guiding all of us, and that our goal of life is the most beautiful, unlimitedly beautiful, kind, generous, opulent, powerful person, Krishna, who we all have an eternal relationship with. No matter what our external bodies may be or what our circumstances may be, that relationship is never lost. It's available for everyone, for even all species of life. Hanuman was a monkey, or kind of a monkey, a Varna, and yet he had a personal, direct relation with Krishna eternally. Even the animals in the jungle where Lord Chaitanya passed by, they all were dancing ecstasy, kissing each other, embracing in Krishna consciousness. So what to speak of ourselves, we have a much greater opportunity than they have. But we have to accept it, try to understand it, and practice it. So Krishna says we're all covered. We all see things differently due to the covering. But there's one reality that we can all see that's given to us by Guru, Sadhana, and Shastra. And that means that we're all eternal servants of Krishna. There's no higher and lower in the spiritual world, ultimately. Whether you're in Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan or Ayodhya, they all have everyone has exactly the relation with Krishna that they desire. That's their eternal identity. No one feels themselves superior in any of the parts of the spiritual world, because they all have the same desire to serve Krishna. They don't care if they all feel themselves subordinate to Krishna and subordinate to each other. They have no desire to feel themselves superior. They only want to please Krishna in some way or another. And if they see someone pleasing Krishna more than they do, they actually appreciate it, that this devotee is serving Krishna more than I am, so I can learn from them and become a better servant of Krishna. And the result is they simply become more blissful and more loving. That's all. They see everyone as their superior to teach them how to become more blissful and loving in the service of Krishna. So Krishna says we're covered and we're being impelled by material desires. Our desires are becoming dovetailed with the wrong desires, and therefore we're getting the reaction of the burning sensation of lust and anger, etc. So Krishna advises us to seek out where our enemy is, and ultimately our enemy starts with hearing. Now, previously, people didn't have the opportunity to hear it like we do about Krishna. At the same time, people didn't have the opportunity to go to hell either so easily by surfing the internet or reading or going on Amazon to search for the fulfillment of one's desires. So we have a great opportunity in Kali Yuga, and also to either go back to the spiritual world or to go to the lowest species of life, depending upon who we want to follow. So then Krishna tells Arjuna, there is a solution. It's not a complete disaster, Kali Yuga. There's a solution. So he says in the verse, Tasmat tvam indriyanya do niyamya bharatarshava papmanam prajihiyenam jnana vijnanashanam. This is text number 41. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, the very beginning, curved this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. So regulating the senses. For us, that means devotional service, of which there are 9 kinds. We can hear about Krishna, we can chant about Krishna, we can remember Krishna, we can do deity worship, we can serve Krishna, we can remember Krishna, offer prayers to him. We can also surrender everything to him. There are 9 different kinds of devotional service. And of course, we have the powerful processes that I mentioned before, beginning with chanting Hare Krishna and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So this will actually slay the symbol of sin as much as we focus our attention on these processes and through them give our love to Krishna. In any situation. Now, some devotees, they seem to be progressing faster than others. Some seem to be having great difficulty. But we should know that the destination of everyone who's taken up Krishna consciousness is sooner or later to go back to Krishna, go back to the spiritual world, be with Krishna. Therefore, rather than getting envious or critical of those who disagree with us or having problems controlling their senses and engaging them in Krishna's service, we should follow Srila Rupa Goswami's advice on how to relate to devotees. Our first business is to put the acharyas and their instructions within our consciousness. In other words, to become a servant of our acharyas and those who represent the acharyas. Now, Srila Prabhupada was a transparent media to Krishna and to all our disciple succession. That whatever he wrote was appropriate for us in this particular time. And it's not different from what Srila Rupa Goswami explained, or what Lord Brahma explained, or what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained. So it's safe to put Prabhupada in the center of our lives. And also, through Prabhupada, we can understand who's also, or to what degree, one is a transparent media to Krishna. Because part of the instructions is to live in the society of devotees and engage in loving exchanges with them. So we need examples. The best example is Srila Prabhupada, and the best example is those who are following Prabhupada, to try to see how others are following Prabhupada, and so we can serve them appropriately. To those who are superior, then we should become their students. To those who are equal, we should become their friends. And for those who are subordinate, we should be merciful to them and assist them in their progress in Krishna consciousness. And that's the appropriate way of becoming an instrument for Krishna in this age. Now, Krishna says that we have working senses. We have dull matter, we have working senses, we have the mind, we have intelligence, and then we have Krishna, or the soul. Then we have Krishna. So our business is to utilize our intelligence, so we put our minds on Krishna. And we have Prabhupada has given us the means to do that. The deities, the books, the devotee association with devotees. The temples, our homes as temples. So the instructions are there how to utilize this material energy in Krishna's service. And while we're doing that, we should also put our minds on Krishna. If we hear about Krishna, we hear about how to serve Krishna. We follow the example of devotees superior to us and learn from them. Then the result is, while we're doing any activity, we'll also be able to do it with the consciousness that this is Krishna's energy and that I should utilize it nicely to please him. Then naturally we'll remember Krishna. If we accept that everything here belongs to Krishna and that we seek guidance from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra and Paramatma within our heart, how to serve Krishna and do it to please him, do it with care and attention, then our reward will be we'll think about Krishna. Krishna will appear within our memory. And when we learn not only to think about Krishna, but to feel for Krishna, feel Krishna's presence, then we'll be able to understand what Krishna consciousness is. We'll experience the love and the happiness that comes from a loving relation with Krishna. It's not just work, work, work. It's also experiencing what it's like to be conscious of Krishna and become conscious Krishna and being conscious. Feel Krishna, just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come. He wanted to, as the mood of Srimati Radharani, because he wanted to experience Krishna's love for Srimati Radharani. Well, first of all, he wanted to experience Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna. So we should also want to experience our love for Krishna. After all, we can go through the day morose, listening to our mind, telling us you're going to die, no one loves you, things are bad and they're getting worse. We can listen to our mind the whole day. And by the end of the day, we'll be completely depressed. We were just a little depressed at the beginning. And therefore, by hearing our mind chant to us the whole day, we become completely depressed. Or we can hear from Krishna and understand that we're eternal and that by thinking about Krishna, by following the process of devotional service and thinking about Krishna, we're actually going to go back to the spiritual world and live forever in a loving relationship with everyone, not just Krishna, but with everyone. So we can do that also. So that depends upon keeping good association, following a regulated sadhana, trying to understand how to chant japa, for instance, with attention. And if we do that, then the result is that we'll naturally think about Krishna. But the most important thing is that, for instance, initiation means we've agreed to stop identifying ourselves with this body, or at least take to the process by which our material identification is diminished and our consciousness of being the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna is increased. Basically, initiation means to give up the false ego and to accept our real ego as the servant of Krishna. So that's called, Prabhupada writes in the last verse in this chapter, identification with our constitutional position as Krishna's servant. At first, one may think this is something strange or artificial, But by practice, one gradually begins to accept that actually I am Krishna's servant. And as we accept that and perform devotional service in that consciousness, then the result is that Krishna is pleased with us. Now, as I said at the beginning, Krishna has a desire to bring his other children back to the spiritual kingdom. At the same time, he has the desire that we go back to the spiritual kingdom. Therefore, as much as, first of all, according to our situations, we try to go back to the spiritual kingdom and accept that there are going to be trials and tribulations on the path. Anyone who thinks that when I accept devotional service, everything's going to be smooth and easy, that there won't be, my mind will suddenly stop being agitated, and I'll just, flick on a switch and Krishna's pastimes will appear spontaneously, day and night within my heart. Everyone will love me. Prasadam will always be on time and exactly what I want to eat that day. In the material world, everyone will honor me for being a devotee. Anyone who thinks like that, they're in the wrong movement. No, we can expect trials and tribulations, inconveniences. We shouldn't try to put ourselves in a situation which is too inconvenient, that makes it impossible to remember Krishna. Not that I want to be austere and practice chanting, so let me go to the North Pole and practice with the polar bears there and show how austere I can be. No, we should try to live our normal lives, and that's sufficient in Kali Yuga. As I said before, Queen Kunti prayed to Lord Krishna for problems. And indeed, Krishna has sent so many problems. Poison, they try to poison Bhima, they try to set their house on fire, they threw Brahmastra weapons, they try to kill them. So she prayed, please send more problems. Because if you send more problems, then we remember you whenever there's a problem. And if we remember you, then there won't be any more repeated birth and death. But we're much more fortunate than Queen Kunti, because we don't have to pray for problems. They're all coming spontaneously, automatically in Kali Yuga. We have to pray that we have the determination to take shelter of Krishna through the process of devotional service, so that we actually remember Krishna. Krishna appears to us. And more and more, we enter into the absorption and consciousness of Krishna. As Krishna sees we're serious about our own sadhana, about our own service, and also serious about helping other people go back to the spiritual world, other of Krishna's children, because we're trying to act as devotees. And a devotee loves Krishna, and he also makes friends with the other devotees. And their friendship is made in such a way that they try to help the other Krishna's children back to the spiritual kingdom. We're all part of one spiritual family, eternally. Some of our brothers and sisters are bewildered by illusion. But we shouldn't give up on everyone. We should try to help some of them go back to the spiritual kingdom with Krishna, to be with Krishna. And some are envious, but we shouldn't think the whole world is just envious, because otherwise, how do we get to become aspiring devotees? But we should avoid the envious. We should identify the envious. Anyone who proclaims that there is no God and refuses to be convinced that there is a God, they must be envious. So people are envious. We're envious too. Not like there's only envious people outside of the Hare Krishna movement, and everyone in the Hare Krishna movement is a complete saint. But at least we understand that we have a problem, and we're trying to resolve it through the process of devotional service. Others can understand if they're explained what their problems really are, and others, they have a problem because they refuse to accept that they have a problem. They're envious, but they refuse to accept. They think being envious is good. It's inspiring. They feed on enviousness. So we should avoid such people. They won't help. We can't help them, and they won't help us. In any case, if we try to chant, if we try to nicely the Hare Krishna mantra in a regulated way, we try to read Prabhupada's books and try to understand what they say. We try to serve Krishna with care and attention in his form as a deity, or even a picture. Chant before the picture, the Panchatattva. Then Krishna, when he sees that we're steady, in spite of any obstacles that are presented by our past activities, then he'll become pleased with us, and he'll give us more and more intelligence, how to do our service better, how to focus our mind more on him. We won't be distracted by misunderstanding what's going on. Clarity will be there, and devotional service will become, as Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book, more clear and more encouraging as time goes on. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Swami, please accept my humble obeisances. Glories to Prabhupada. Sorry to disturb, but thank you for a wonderful lecture. I just wanted to ask, because you mentioned that in ISKCON we have two genders, male and female, yeah, woman and man.
There may be other ones, but we're not into 72 like they are in America.
Yeah, I do understand. My question is about gay devotees. And once more, you said that when we're taking initiation, it means we're accepting that we're not this body. So what about female accepting initiation with dhoti and shaven head?
With what? What was the last words?
Yeah, shaven head and in dhoti and kurta, not sari.
Oh, she's in a dhoti and kurta. Male and female is generally understood. Someone wants to become the controller, and someone else takes the role of being controlled. They're both trying to enjoy in their own way. So whatever we designate ourselves, the main mood is I'm controlling and I'm enjoying. So there's no, even amongst the 72 genders they have, it's the same mood. I'm controlling and I'm enjoying. So what about it? These things are external. They're not as important as the internal consciousness, but still some clarity has to be there.
That's why I don't know where I stand.
Because, how that's worked out, I don't know. Often people, they claim, for instance, in America, that I have a different sex identity than I have biologically. But then it turns out that they suddenly discover when they're in a gym with ladies that they have their biological sex, gender actually has some influence over them. And usually it's quite embarrassing. So people are quite confused in this age. They've been misdirected.
Yes, but what example we are giving where we stand ISKCON agreeing? Because it looks like we don't follow what we preach, or it means there is disagreement within the movement. And what's something on about this more genders? There are, if somebody can prove that DNR is not male and female, it means you are third gender. But as long as our DNR proves that we are like this, so we can't argue. It means there is psychological issue, mental issue, schizophrenia. It's called schizophrenia, and for the government, it's very useful. So ISKCON shouldn't have anything with that.
In any case, first of all, there's so few devotees living in the ashram nowadays. It's usually not a problem. On the other hand, how we deal with it, generally speaking, that's up to the individual managers how to deal with that, as far as, and everyone's an individual. If someone insists that they're actually in a female body, that they're actually male, we're not going to, in our ashrams, we're not going to put the male with the female. it's not going to work. Or with the female in the male ashram, it's not going to work. So how they work it out is they have to figure out, because there's different circumstances and different personalities involved. But that's not our main thrust in our movement. The main thrust is that those who live in the ashram, as probably conceived of, should be quite serious about Krishna consciousness. It's not just a boarding house or something you try out for a little while in general. It's for very serious devotees. And therefore, even before someone lives in the ashram, there should be clarity in what the qualifications are. And then you can judge accordingly where to place people if you're clear what the qualifications are and what their qualities are. You can have some clarity to it. And of course, if you have such clarity, it's according to the time, place, and circumstance in the ashram. If we don't have the capacity to handle things that are beyond our capacity, then we won't handle it. You have clarity. And if we just don't have that clarity and we just invite everyone to come when they're qualified or disqualified, then we'll have difficulty.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Yes, Parthasarthi, Prabhu. Yes, Parthasarthi. Are you asking a question, Parthasarthi?
Sorry, the microphone was off. Thank you so much for your honest class, Guru Maharaj. I just want to ask you because nowadays sometimes it's a bit hard for grihastas to provide nicely with for the families, and sometimes
I'll be right there. Okay. Yeah.
and sometimes grihastas don't.
Please don't make it a long question. I have a guest here.
Yeah, and sometimes it's very difficult.
Maharaj? Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj? Can you come and say hello?
Jai Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Well, make it a little bit good. Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj.
Jai.
Come over here. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
What is this group? This is my English class. Oh, these are devotees from all around the world. We have America, we have Poland, we have, see where else we have here. Russia, Ukraine,
Australia.
Australia.
Nice.
Okay, so quick question, because
Yeah, well, just to make it short, sometimes grihastas decide not to have children. Srila Prabhupada said that marriage without children is like a desert. However, I understand sometimes it's very hard for grihastas to have children because of the situation. And some of them make the glorious decision to dedicate their life to preach instead of having children. But sometimes it still comes the desire, and sometimes we have this tendency to ask Krishna for less problems instead of asking Krishna for more problems. So how can we deal with this?
how to deal with it? We have to use our intelligence, how to deal with it. And if we don't know how to deal with it, we have to go to someone who knows better how to deal with it than we do and ask them how to deal with it. Otherwise, what can you do? And we may make mistakes in trying to deal with it, but hopefully we learn from our mistakes. But unless we humbly investigate how to deal with these things when we don't know, and only when it's clearer, then we try to apply our determination to deal with it. Well, that's the best way of doing it. Humbly investigate how to deal with things through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And when it becomes clear, then we deal with it. And if it's not clear, we don't deal with it.
Thanks, Guru
Perfect.
Maharaj.
I'm going to stop here. If you have any questions, you can write to me. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Gita,
Hare
Ki Jai.
Krishna.
Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you so
Keep
Guru
holy
much.
the Prahladananda Swami Maharaj ki.
Hare Krishna.
Bye.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, God brothers, God sisters. Have a
Hare
lovely